We've been spending some time talking about the why new standards, and we've noted the contextual changes in our world, the demographic changes, and certainly the technology changes. So we have a clear understanding of a rationale for why we need new standards. Let's talk now about the what. What are these new standards? You'll notice that we are going from 6 to 10 standards. That's probably one of the first things people are quick to notice. I would also point out that these 10 standards are the professional standards for educational leaders, with one exception. You'll find that in the professional standards for educational leaders, the word in each of the stems is effective educational leaders. That is the only difference. We've removed the word effective because we want to use it in our progressions. So I'll say more about that later on, but that really is the only difference. So when you hear people mention professional standards for educational leaders or PISL, those in fact are the Iowa standards for school leaders. So at this point, I would invite you to press pause and take a moment to look at Iowa's current ISSL, the 6 standards and 35 criteria, and then notice the new ISSL, the ISSL adopted 2021, and just notice what do you see that's similar, what do you see that is different, and anything that resonates with you. I would imagine that in your comparison and contrast of the two sets of standards, you noticed a number of different things. You noticed, obviously, as we've mentioned, we've gone from 6 to 10. You notice that we don't have criteria in the new standard. I should note there are 83 elements that align to the professional standards for educational leaders. That is a lot. You will see those show up in the progressions. We had a long conversation, the planning team, the design team had a long conversation as to whether or not the elements should be included. And if you look at the research around the professional standards for educational leaders, you'll find that those elements were written primarily for building level leaders. And we knew, of course, that we wanted our standards to be applicable to all school leader roles. So that was one of the driving reasons why we elected not to include the 83 elements from the PISL in the standards adoption. So again, you'll notice we don't have criteria. We have the 10 standards. You probably also noticed a shift in the language. And as a former English teacher, I think language matters greatly. And so the fact that we talk about each and every student in the new standards compared to a vision for all students in our current standards is significant. You probably noticed that equity has been pulled out as its own standard, equity and cultural responsiveness. And again, this isn't to say we have not attended to equity in the past. That simply isn't true. It's really spotlighting equity as a way, as a driver for us to reach and teach each and every student. So you likely noticed equity is its own standard. You probably noticed that other things, community of practice, community, have been pulled out as separate standards. This is because in the last 20 years, the research speaking to the impact of teachers, leaders working together to problem solve challenges of learning, challenges of instruction, challenges of leadership makes a significant difference. As we noted, John Hattie's work, effect size 1.57, that is huge. That's a compelling reason for us to be working together. And study after study after study bears out the significance of what can happen when all of us are working together on behalf of our students. So you probably noticed that. What you may not have realized is that our new standards are grounded in the recent research around the studies showing the correlation between leadership and student learning. In fact, the building leadership is second only to the teacher in the classroom in impacting student learning. The Wallstrom Seashore Lewis study from around 2004 was one of the first to tie pretty tightly student learning to building leadership. And just this February 2021, Wallace produced another report on a second study, similar study to that 2004 study, saying, I'm not sure we we were stating this significantly enough, meaning that the correlation between building level leadership and student growth and achievement was even greater than they first suspected. So what does this mean? It means that school leadership really matters, and our new standards reflect those findings from those research studies. As I mentioned earlier, that shift from 6 to 10 can feel a little bit overwhelming. I think what's important to note that you may not have picked up just in that comparison contrast is the fact that these standards really emphasize the importance of distributed leadership. No one person can do it all. We're fortunate in our state to have a system of teacher leadership and compensation, and these standards reflect the importance of leaders distributing and delegating leadership to others. Because again, as you look through those standards, no one person could do all of those. And when we think about being able to play to our strengths and to capitalize on our strengths, it's this distributed leadership that provides us those opportunities to be able to do that. And I think it's important to note that all of you have this threshold level of leadership. And you all have strengths in, I would imagine, some aspect of all 10 standards. It's that many of you, all of you, have specialized strengths relative to several of the standards. And the beauty of these new standards is you get to capitalize on that, and you get to put those to work on behalf of the students in your district. And certainly not last but not least, one of my favorites is that our new standards speak to the importance of self-care. They speak to the importance of self-care for us as leaders. They speak to the importance of wellness for our students, and they speak to the importance of taking care of our staff. So it works like this. If we take care of ourselves, we can be best in service of our teachers and our staff. If they're taking care of themselves, they can be best in service of our students. And so these new standards speak to the importance of that leadership life fit. And I could not be more excited about that, because we know how true that is in order to keep people in their roles. And we know from the work of Reeves and Fullen that sustainability and leadership is another key to increase student growth and development. I want to step back and just highlight a couple of things that are important to understand about the new standards. This slide shows a side-by-side crosswalk between the two standards, the two sets, the ISSL and the PSL standards. The ISSL standards, again, good standards, were designed to inform policy. And I think an unintended consequence of being in the era of No Child Left Behind is that they resulted in a checklist sort of an approach to school leadership. Again, unintentional. And so they were intended to inform policy. The new standards are designed to inform practice. They were written to help support designing professional learning. They were written to help inform designing hiring process, from interview questions to job descriptions. They were designed to inform post-secondary or admin practice or admin prep. So again, designed to inform practice. They've been expanded to be able to support that purpose. And I think that this slide in particular shows that expansion and speaks to the difference in purpose, in spirit and intent of the standards. I'd invite you to take a moment to review this quote that you see on this slide. I lifted this from the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders because I think it speaks so clearly to the spirit and intent of these standards. As you can see, notice the highlighted words. I think those resonate the most. These are model standards. They're a compass. They're a framework. They're not prescriptive. They are expected, intended to be adapted to fit into your respective context. So you'll notice there's this breadth to the standard that still also includes some specificity. It's an interesting dichotomy when you think about that. But again, the purpose is that I could take these and decide, okay, what what do I need in ABC school district? What do I need in ABC district? What should this look like, sound like, and feel like based upon our demographic, based upon our community, based upon the economy in our community, based upon all of those factors and what we want, maybe in a portrait of a graduate for our students, what are the implications of that for us as school leaders, and where we will find ourselves emphasizing where we spend our time and our energy. So again, I think it's worth noting that these are not prescriptive. They are intended to be adapted. They're flexible. And this particular quote from the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders documents and research gives us the permission we need to be able to do that.